It stands for unbelievable. It's snowing outside.
Welcome, Griff. Rachel.
Thank you. I brought the Wisconsin weather.
You really did?
To New York. I know. I walked to the studio in slush.
Yes, and I slid all the way from New Jersey. I wore a seatbelt for the first time in a long time. I'm not going to put a date on it.
You don't wash your hands. You don't wear seatbelts.
Kids, wear your seatbelts, okay? But I believe that individuals should be free to be stupid and not wear seatbelts if they don't want to. Today, I wore one because we were sliding all over.
That's America.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the Pete rule. If it snows, seatbelts. No snow, no seatbelt.
Free to be dumb. All right. Yeah, that's kind of the idea.
That's unbelievable.
That's not unbelievable at all.
Button that up so good.
You like that?
Good job.
Yeah, let me tell you what else is unbelievable. There's more people jumping in the Democratic 2020 race.
Another one?
Yeah.
So another candidate. Now we now have 10 official 2020 Democrat presidential hopefuls because Governor Jay Inslee of Washington just entered the race yesterday. So you've got Jay Inslee, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren, John Delaney, Tulsi Gabbard, Julian Castro. In case you missed it, Jay Inslee is running on nothing but a climate change platform. That's all he's going to run on.
You said earlier he's AOC, except he's
an old white guy.
He's an old white guy.
Yeah. So he's AOC just as an old white guy, which means he's dead in the water inside his own party that plays identity politics. I digress. But, we'll see. Clearly, this is part of a absolute lurch on the left for that party.
Yeah, and now we hear that Biden's going to get in.
He is. Well, and now Biden, to point out, is very different than Inslee because right now, excuse me, many Americans are just waking up watching this channel going, who? Who is Jay Inslee? And he's not a well-known guy.
No.
But he sees an opportunity in this unbelievably wide open field. It's almost like if you were a card-carrying Democrat and you don't have anything to do right now, you might as well run for president because a lot of people are getting in. Former Governor John Hickenlooper of Colorado probably also jumping in, we're hearing. But
John Hickenlooper?
Hickenlooper. But the difference is that Biden comes in with a lot of credibility. He obviously doesn't need any name recognition, but his positions are seen as very moderate. Here, let me play a soundbite from him of what he was saying. I'm sorry.
No, there's a headline from the Wall Street Journal, and the Wall Street Journal says, Biden leans toward another run, but the heart of his party is shifted. And Griff, to your point, another guy he'd have to run against is Bernie Sanders, who's a declared Democratic socialist. Joe Biden, no moderate, but he's an old school liberal as opposed to a leftist or a socialist.
That's where the heart of the party is.
Totally. So this is Bernie Sanders on The View yesterday talking about his views.
Does the Green New Deal go too far?
No. You cannot go too far on the issue of climate change. The future of the planet is at stake. Okay? We have, according to the best scientists in the world, we have 12 years.
Oh, fascinating to hear that because it was just this week that Clinton's staffers during the presidential run in 2016 outed Bernie Sanders as the biggest private jet diva of the entire cycle. So he thinks the planet's going to end in 12 years, but he still wants to do private jet
Well, of course, there's hypocrisy there. It's a religion. It has become the religion of his base. And as a result, he needs to be prophetic about how urgent the times are. Who's this other guy, Jay Inslee? It's all they're going to talk about because their base, that's where their base is. And they've been indoctrinated in that.
Well, he has a rally in Brooklyn today, and it's where he kicked off his last campaign. I'm going to go to it.
I was just going to say, you should go. Fantastic.
Yeah, and it's going to be snowing, so I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
I have to just laugh at this because it's so typical of a socialist. They preach egalitarianism. If you go on Facebook, Instagram, you'll see that Nicolas Maduro and Fidel Castro's kids, they're all on Instagram as the rich kids on yachts and so forth. So this is just very, very typical. Preach egalitarianism, preach about the climate, and then not do it yourself.
Well said. Well, our Vice President, Mike Pence, was at CPAC yesterday, still going on in Washington. The president will speak there today. He talked about the trend on the left of socialism. Listen.
It was freedom, not socialism, that gave us the most prosperous economy in the history of the world. It was freedom, not socialism, that ended slavery, won 2 world wars, and stands today as the beacon of hope for all the world. And it was freedom, not socialism, that gave us the highest quality of life, the cleanest environment on earth, and improved the health and well-being of millions around the world. It was freedom.
Pretty clear message, no doubt. Yeah. Although, on the point of Bernie Sanders, who we just talked about, he has now hired a new deputy national press secretary who can't even vote for him because she is an illegal immigrant. Her name is Belen Sisa. She's an activist. Belen
Sisa.
Belen Sisa.
She's illegal, but she's a DACA recipient.
Fine,
so she's here
still
legally.
illegal. Temporarily, currently.
She's currently.
But I don't want to hear a single ad or attack item on a single Republican ever again for having an undocumented nanny or undocumented this or undocumented that. If you're going to be out front with my deputy press secretary is illegal, stop with all the you're not qualified because you had this or that.
I just hope we don't take that you don't take the bait on that, Pete, because here's the deal. She is here legally. Of all the people who are here illegally, she came at 6 years old, no fault of her own. And I think the focus ought to be on securing the border. I mean, even Donald Trump wants to give women or people like her a chance to stay in this country if we secure the border.
It's going to be interesting to see what all the Democrat candidates say about that. They'll, of course, jump in with all the people we showed in the very beginning of the top of the show. But the infighting inside the Democrat Party, these battles are raging.
Yeah, Rachel, you know about these. There are these caucus meetings that are held by Republicans and Democrats. So from the Washington Post that yesterday, House Democrats, here's the headline, here's the quote from the article. House Democrats exploded in recriminations Thursday over moderates bucking the party with liberal Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez threatening to put those voting with the Republicans on a list for a primary challenge. It's been reported, Rachel, that in this closed-door meeting with Democrats, the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and I call her Comrade Cortez, got up together and basically said, if you better stop voting with these Republicans. There's
amendment. It's an amendment.
A motion to recommit or whatever, where they've been sort of getting Democrats to vote on tough stuff. I feel like it's sort of rare for a freshman Democrat to stand up and scold all these other members.
It is rare, but you know what else is rare? For a party in majority to vote for these amendments. It shows a deep division. In 8 years of the House being in the hands of the Republicans, they never once voted for one of those. They never once voted for one of those when the Democrats offered the amendment. But in just 2 months, they voted for two. And by the way, hypocrisy on the part of AOC, she voted for one of them last month. That was the anti-DBS and in support of Israel amendment that was put in there after Representative Omar from your home state made those anti-Israel. So A, she voted for it, and B, it really shows just how full of herself and how sure of herself she is that she can tell these veteran Democrats, I've got a list. And it sounds like she's ready to send them to re-education camp.
Here's the thing, though. The cardinal sin now in the Democrat Party is to say something nice or kind about a fellow lawmaker who happens to be a Republican.
You're right.
Now, if you listen to Joe Biden talking about Mike Pence, calling him a decent guy. That's wrong. Take a listen.
The fact of the matter is, it was followed on by a guy who's a decent guy, our vice president, who stood before this group of allies and leaders and said, I'm here on behalf of President Trump. And there was dead silence.
Okay, just remember, the most he said about the vice president, he's a decent guy. I mean, he didn't say he's a great guy, or I love him, or inviting him to my wedding. He said he's a decent guy. Now, immediately or quickly after that, Cynthia Nixon, you know her from acting on television, and that's
Sex
all
and the
she's famous
City.
for. Yeah, well, congratulations for acting and pretending to be somebody else. This is what she tweeted. She said, Joe Biden, you've just called America's most anti-LGBT elected leader a, quote, decent guy. Please consider how this falls on the ears of our community. So Joe Biden, as the times require, responds to the woman who acts on television and tweeted this. He said, you're right, Cynthia. I was making a point in a foreign policy context that under normal circumstances, a vice president would be given a silent reaction on the world stage. But there's nothing decent about being anti-LGBTQ rights, and that includes the vice president. So, Rachel, it seems we're in a moment where even saying one friendly thing about a political opponent, not okay.
Not okay, and you see that the party has really left Joe Biden. This is the kind of missteps that he's going to continue to make, I believe, throughout the campaign, because he's still living in a different era where you could actually believe that people you disagree with are still decent people.
Yes.
You're not allowed to do that anymore. They're considered enemies. So.
That's right. Pour a cup of coffee. Democrats are killing each other. It's snowing in New York.
Pull out the
and Rachel has
popcorn.
a headline.
And Comrade Cortez has a list, and you better hope you're not on it.
Don't be on that list. All right, we're going to turn now to your headlines. Now, remember, this attack on conservative activists at UC Berkeley. Take a look. That man accused of throwing that punch is now behind bars. Police charging Zachary Greenberg with assault. Authorities say he used to be an employee at the university. Greenberg will appear in court on Monday. The victim, Hayden Williams, is meeting with President Trump today and will be on Fox and Friends tomorrow. President Trump says his remarks regarding Otto Warmbier's death were misunderstood. This after he suggested that Kim Jong-un did not know the American was being abused while in North Korean custody. The president tweeting in part, quote, "I never liked being misinterpreted, but especially when it comes to Otto Warmbier and his great family. Of course, I hold North Korea responsible for Otto's mistreatment and his death." The college student was arrested for taking a propaganda poster, and he died days after being returned to the U.S. in a coma 17 months later. Major League Baseball now looking into a public fight between the San Francisco Giants CEO and his wife. Watch this. The video obtained by TMZ Sports shows Larry Baird trying to take a cell phone from his wife before knocking her to the ground in California. They both have apologized, calling the incident embarrassing, and were arguing over a family matter. And those are your headlines. Well, I'm still kind of reeling from that video. That was the first time I saw it.
Well, he
so
was trying to take a cell phone. You know, they both say it was less than what is shown on video, but who the heck knows? Yeah. All right. Thanks, Rachel. All right. Democrats prepared to launch a full-out assault against the President of the United States and his family. But will these investigations have an effect on the president's support? And this grandmother now being hailed the Iceberg Queen? But what happens when she floats out to sea? The story behind these now viral pictures coming up.
Some of the biggest names in conservative politics riling up the GOP base at the annual Conservative Political Action Conference.
And it all leads up to today's headliner with President Trump slated to make his return to the CPAC stage at 11:30 this morning. Here with a preview of what to expect as chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. Matt, thanks for being here this morning, and thank you for having me yesterday. Was my panel the greatest panel in CPAC history? That's what I want to know.
I mean, some people are still raving about it, Pete, this morning over coffee. I mean, it's just, you might have changed the course of history.
That's what I thought, Matt. That's what I thought, but I don't want to be too selfish. The president today, you've had headliners across the board. You've got the president today. Give us a sense of what's going on at CPAC.
Well, obviously the big news is that the president's coming back to CPAC after his trip to Asia. He had called me and said, look, I'm going to do everything I can to get back to CPAC. It's where I want to be. And I think everybody here is going to appreciate this is an extraordinary gesture for a president who's been in the air for about 40 hours to be back talking to the heart and soul of the Republican Party, the conservative movement.
Absolutely.
Matt, this is Rachel. Hello.
Hey, Rachel. How are you?
Good. Listen, according to the New York Times, they say that Michael Cohen's testimony is going to bring him trouble with his voters. Now, you're there at CPAC with the base, the grassroots. What do you think the impact of this week's testimony is on his voters?
I think that for at least half the country, Rachel, they are exhausted from this whole topic. They view Michael Cohen as kind of a sleazeball who has given different answers to Congress on different questions, different answers to federal prosecutors. So when you're giving different answers to the same question, it means that one of those answers is dishonest, and he just goes back and forth. Right now, he's trying to make a deal to be loved by the Democrats, which is a very interesting strategy. I actually feel sorry for the guy. He seemed rather pathetic from my standpoint with his testimony. And I think if they don't find any evidence of collusion, which there's none, and after 2 years, if you can't find it, it ain't there, I think most people just say, look, let's move on. Yeah. Let's start solving the nation's problems.
Matt, you're as in touch with the grassroots of the conservative side of the party as anybody. Have you heard even a word about Bob Mueller, Russian collusion? Are people talking about that, or is it about the president's agenda?
If they're really not talking about it, we're not spending too much time focusing on it. I think there's almost unanimity with people who are at CPAC. Like, this is a ridiculous waste of taxpayer money. It is a political investigation. If there's no collusion, then we've done nothing but waste 2 years of the nation's time. What conservatives, my takeaway, Pete, is that people here are pretty happy. Yeah. I even used the word harmonious, which at a CPAC I've not seen before, because there's always something that's riling people up. And this year, they were so happy with what's happening coming out of the White House.
Very interesting stuff. Matt Schlapp, thank you. We'll be watching 11:30. The president will be on that stage, a great lineup. And you can watch it all on Fox Nation, by the way, where they're live streaming CPAC. Matt Schlapp, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, well, you've heard Democrats say this about the border.
There's no security crisis at the border.
Stop manufacturing a crisis.
It's a manufactured crisis, and a crisis that manufactured by the Trump administration.
Yep. Well, this morning we've got more proof of that crisis. We're breaking down some of the biggest busts at our border coming up next.
And Michael Cohen says he didn't want a White House job, and then he was called a liar. What's his lawyer saying now? Stay with us.
Battle for border security reaching a fever pitch as officials on the front lines face the dangers of drugs flowing into America unchecked. Let's take a quick look at some of the biggest drug busts reported by border officials just this week in Pharr, Texas. Here it is. 180,000 worth of cocaine hidden in a tractor trailer weighing in at over 23 pounds. This one in Uvalde, Texas, almost 11 pounds of heroin was confiscated worth $227,000. And in Nogales, Arizona, almost 350 pounds of narcotics seized by agents, including heroin, meth, cocaine, and fentanyl, worth a whopping $4.3 million. And this one at the World Trade Bridge in Laredo, Texas, where Speaker Pelosi visited, another 1,600 pounds of cocaine and marijuana seized worth $2.3 million. And finally, another $2.5 million worth of meth and marijuana weighing almost 3,300 pounds recovered in Nogales, Arizona. Now, this comes as almost 7,000 illegal aliens were apprehended in the Rio Grande Valley just this week, with 4 consecutive days of 1,000 per day. For more on this, let's bring in Chief Manny Padilla. He's now the director of the Border Patrol's Joint Task Force West in San Antonio. And as I mentioned, the former RGV chief. Chief Padilla, good morning. Tell me about what we're seeing with these numbers, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me here, Griff. Well, I'll tell you, statistically speaking, I can tell you that in fiscal year 18, the Border Patrol apprehended 396,500 people. This year, Griff, we are looking at a 97% increase over last year. So 270 apprehensions so far this year, and we're not even at the at mid-year yet. So we're looking at pretty high numbers. Now, when you start looking at the numbers closely, what we have is 2 very distinct problem sets at the border, and they require 2 very distinct solutions. So what does that mean? When you look at the apprehensions, about 60% of the apprehensions that we're seeing this year are family units and unaccompanied children. This population of people are turning themselves into border agents and not trying to evade. This problem actually started in fiscal year 2014 when we started seeing an influx of unaccompanied children, and it has exponentially just grown to the levels that we're seeing right now. Chief. Now, this problem set is on top of the traditional border security mission that includes what you are talking about, the narcotic smuggling, the criminal aliens, the aliens from special interest countries, as well as the economic migrants that are trying to evade border authorities because they will be detained and returned to their country. So 2 very distinct problem sets. So when we talk about 2 different solutions, on the first problem set, which is the unaccompanied children and the family units, that's where we need Congress's support to close these immigration loopholes that are being exploited extensively with this population. So the flows of immigration always adjust to our legal framework that we have in regards to immigration.
Chief, I just want to jump in here just to add to this whole discussion as you give us these numbers, and actually we can show you, if you look at where we were in fiscal year 18 at this time, you see the 109,543, almost double, 201,497 so far this year. But I listened to the Interior Secretary of Mexico speaking at a group in Washington this week saying that they believe this phenomenon of caravans is going to bring as many as 700,000 migrants into Mexico this year. When you add that, are we looking at potentially one of the most heavy illegal alien trafficked border situations you've had in history on the border right now, if you project forward?
Yes, so we've had 1.6 million apprehensions in fiscal year 2000, but you're comparing apples and oranges, because what we are seeing right now is about 78-79% of the people that we are detaining are non-Mexican nationals. In the early days, the majority of the people, up to 98%, were Mexican nationals. And the difference is one person from Central America takes a long time to process, up to 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours to process one person. In the old days, when we were apprehending people from Mexico, you could process one in 15 minutes or so, and you can return them to Mexico. So it's a totally different problem set that you cannot compare just on raw numbers. There's a lot of differences just because of their nationalities.
Chief Padilla, thank you for bringing us up to speed as we continue to inform everyone about the conditions and the situation on the border. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Senate Democrats blocking a bill that would have required doctors to treat infants born after failed abortions. But did the mainstream media even cover it? That answer coming up. And a high school wrestler pulls himself out of the state championships because it was against a girl. He talks about why. That's coming up next.
Microscope here, and I do believe in microscopes, actually.
Wait, hold on. Fox News Alert.
Capture the germs on
Breaking news, we focus on the weather in our little island here in Manhattan. It is snowing, but it may not be snowing where you are, so we hope you have a coffee and you're joining us this morning.
Yeah, let's have some
It's true. Now, we like to bring you interesting topics. Well, in the state of Colorado, there's a high school wrestler who is in the state championships, actually pulled himself out of the state championships because he was going to be wrestling against a girl, which brings into a state law there where girls and guys have to, as far as wrestling's concerned, are together. There's no girls wrestling in Colorado.
Right.
He was on his way to being a part of the state championship, pulled out of it because he was going to have to wrestle a girl. This is what high school wrestler Brendan Johnson had to say on forfeiting the match.
It's just so physical, physically close, and I just don't think that's really appropriate with a young lady, and it's also so aggressive, and just I'm not really, I guess, comfortable with. I think that it's possible to forfeit the match while still respecting them.
So a pretty sincere case. What do you think?
I say this young man was raised right. That's my opinion. And if the girls want to wrestle, then have a darn wrestling team for girls. I think this is not the way it should be. And this young man, he's right, and his parents raised him right, and this is not appropriate.
But you put your finger on it, and that is a girls' league. Now, 12 states recognize female wrestling in high school, and in Colorado they do not. That's why this woman...
Why?
Well, just because that's the situation in Colorado. But here's the impact. In Division I collegiate wrestling, this kid, what he has done based on his beliefs is tremendous when you consider what he's walked away with. I have a kid about to go to college, hoping for any kind of scholarship she can get. You know, this kid is in the state championships, and he withdrew. So we don't even know what he may have stepped away from. And so it's, like I said, 12 states in all 50, right, are sanctioning girls' wrestlings. Colorado's not one of them. They're going to have to figure out what to do because this kid, based on his moral fiber, the way he's raised, made a decision that he felt was the right one. But it's not necessarily fair when you really broaden the discussion.
Well, of course. My father is a high school athletic director. And for the most part, it is, you need to have enough demand in the state in order to have a girls wrestling league. It's not, I think the article said 17,000 girls are wrestlers across the country. Like, I love that. I love female athletics. It's fantastic. But for guys to be wrestling girls, like, it just doesn't.
It's all putting these kids in such difficult situations and having to make difficult choices. Here's what Dr. Phil, I love Dr. Phil, here's what he has to say about this.
You cannot legislate that everything is going to be equal for everybody, because everybody's not equal. I'm sorry, they're not equal. They may be equal in terms of their value as a human being.
Yes.
But they're not equal in math skills. They're not equal in how fast they run. They're not equal in creativity. They're not equal. Everybody has their own value, but that doesn't mean their marketable skills in an open society, in an open market, are going to be the same.
So he wasn't specifically weighing in on this particular issue, but he's weighing in on the whole concept of, there are differences between boys and girls, and that's kind of a good thing.
Yeah, he's going to get panned for those comments.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
No, he will, for pointing out the patently obvious reality that our emotional makeup, our mental makeup, our physical makeup are different. And thank God. Yeah. If the world was full of men, we'd be in trouble. Just like if the world was full of women, we'd be in trouble.
Sometimes when I nag my husband about not doing something like, wiping down the counter or something, he's like, did you want to marry yourself? And I say no.
Sean Duffy,
thank God for the differences.
We salute you.
Yes, we do. Well, we want to know what you think. Friends at FoxNews.com. I bet you've got an opinion on it. Send it to us and we'll read it.
All right. And in the meantime, I'm going to turn to some headlines. The White House is slapping new sanctions on high-ranking Venezuela security forces for blocking humanitarian aid. The administration is also revoking visas of 49 officials. Meanwhile, Democratic Congressman Ilhan Omar is slamming the U.S. for sending aid.
We're sending humanitarian aid that is in the guise of, eventually invading this country.
You don't support the leader of the opposition as being the president right now, not
Absolutely
President Maduro.
The U.S. is one of several nations that have recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as Venezuela's legitimate president. Michael Cohen's lawyer admits Cohen was once interested in working in President Trump's White House. Cohen's attorney saying in a statement, quote, he speculated about a possible position in the White House, but after he consulted with his family and friends, he decided that he preferred to be the personal attorney to the president. This, as House Republicans call for the Justice Department to investigate the former Trump lawyer for allegedly lying during sworn testimony. A teacher is forced to take down a poster honoring Colin Kaepernick after the display caused a disruption.
Thank you all for participating in this. I'm going to go ahead and remove it.
The South Florida school says it was flooded with calls from parents who found the poster offensive. Kaepernick sparked a firestorm of controversy for kneeling during the national anthem back in 2016.
A kneeling Kaepernick poster.
A grandmother is rescued when a chunk of frozen ice drags her out to sea. The Texas woman was posing for a picture in Iceland when a wave caused the ice throne she was sitting on to break off. A bystander who happened to be a boat captain had to rescue the grandmother, according to BuzzFeed. Everyone, she is okay. Her family is now hailing her as the iceberg queen. And those are your headlines. That's kind of funny.
That was
scary too.
Interesting set of headlines.
Yeah. Rick, any icebergs?
I've been to that beach in Iceland. Have you been to Iceland?
No.
It's one of the coolest places you'll ever go, and there's this beach where all this ice washes on shore, but it's really dangerous. Like, she's lucky she's alive. Wow. And she got an amazing picture.
She did.
Yeah,
that's the whole point these days, right?
Get that she really did. Hey, Rachel, how's the snow this year for you?
Oh, my gosh.
Her mic was turned off, but she said, oh, my gosh. Yeah, really bad snow. Here's your temps as you're waking up. Still really cold. We're into March now, and it still feels very much like winter. In fact, the Northeast has not had much snow at all this winter. At least coastal areas, interior sections have. Coastal areas have not waking up this morning to a few inches in New York. We'll see maybe 4 to 5 inches around Boston, a little bit more out across Cape Cod and the islands. That's the first storm. Next storm is out across the west now, bringing a lot more rain, where we saw all of that flooding this week. One of the wettest seasons we've seen in California. The drought in California almost completely wiped off the map, which is great news. However, it is going to cause still a lot more flooding. Now, here's how this storm plays out throughout the day today. Pulls in towards the Four Corners states, a lot of snow across parts of Colorado, maybe 30 to 40 inches. Then we'll see the snow across the Central Plains. And then Sunday night into Monday, another snowstorm comes in across the Northeast. There you go, guys.
You know, Punxsutawney Phil is losing his edge.
He is. He never had it, I'll be honest with you.
Never had it.
Yep.
And offensive to all meteorologists. You're right. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks. All right, Democratic presidential hopefuls are the ones who blocked a bill that would have required doctors to help infants born after failed abortions. Our next guest says this will only hurt the left in 2020.
And we often have breakfast with friends. Well, this morning, Janice is having coffee with cops. Good morning, Janice.
Good morning. We are at the Sweetwater Bar and Grill in Cinnaminson, New Jersey, having coffee with cops. I've got the chief, I've got the mayor here, and my troops in back of me. Are you guys excited to be on Fox and Friends? All right, we will talk to them in the next hour. Stay with us. Cheers, everybody.
This week, Senate Democrats blocked a bill designed to protect newborns against infanticide. The Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act would have required doctors to treat infants born after failed abortions. So how did the mainstream media cover it? Well, Kelsey Bolar is a senior writer for the Heritage Foundation and a visiting fellow for the Independent Women's Forum. Welcome, Kelsey.
Good morning.
So tell us, how did the media cover this?
That's a good question, and the short answer is they didn't cover it. Fox News was one of the only mainstream news organizations to cover this vote, and I think that speaks to more than just media bias. It's a dereliction of the media's duty to inform American citizens. Look, it shows that the media is really working overtime to protect Democrats, because I think many members of the media, journalists, know how unconscionable this vote really was when 80% of Americans support limiting abortion to the first 3 months of a woman's pregnancy. And, you know, already we're seeing the effects of these very extremist abortion positions and now infanticide on the left, where now we, for the first time since 2009, we have an equal number of Americans who identify as pro-life as they do pro-choice.
Right. Let's take a look at some of these numbers. I think you bring up a great point about how what the mainstream media has done. So we have ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN. None of them had any mention of it. I'll also add, Kelsey, you know, Fox was very brave and brought on abortion survivors, and I've spoken to some of them. They have never ever been invited on any of the other networks. So I think they say it's a rare incident. That's why they didn't vote for this bill on the Democrat side, and yet there are actual human beings that are alive right now that have survived this procedure. Yesterday, Elizabeth Warren was confronted at a town hall on this issue. Let's take a look, and we'll come back on the other side.
What about the babies that survive abortions? How come they can't have health care?
Infanticide is illegal everywhere in America.
You voted against it.
Go ahead. Infanticide is illegal everywhere in America.
Clearly, she sees this as not a very popular position to take.
Right. This should have been an easy vote for Democrats and Republicans. And there's also been a lot of misinformation about this piece of legislation. It would not stop a single abortion from happening in the United States. It would simply protect babies who are born alive after a botched abortion. And again, the fact that the media is working overtime to protect Democrats from communicating to Americans where they really stand on this issue, I think is a dereliction of their duty as journalists to inform.
Yeah, it certainly brings up a lot of issues in an age when they're fighting back against things like fake news. So thank you so much for bringing that up to us, Kelsey, and have a great day.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right. Now, the state of New York now is begging Amazon to reconsider its plans to pull out of New York. But a brand new fight is bubbling up for Amazon in Virginia. Kurt the Cyber Guy is here with the big tech backlash. That's coming up next. Plus, could there soon be no more prince or princess? How Meghan Markle and Prince Harry may raise their baby to be gender fluid.
Welcome back. Couple of quick headlines for you. Facebook could be close to launching their own cryptocurrency. The New York Times reporting its first digital coin is likely to be tied to the value of traditional assets like gold. The social media giant is expected to launch this by summer. Don't sleep on Bitcoin. It's coming back, I'm telling you. You heard it here first. Don't laugh, Kurt. And you may have to wait longer to get your Amazon packages. The company is cutting down on deliveries to once a week as a way to reduce waste. Starting Tuesday, U.S. Prime members enrolled in the new service will need to select a specific day to receive a week's worth of delivery. Apparently that is by choice. You can choose.
I wouldn't want to.
I choose tomorrow.
I choose tomorrow. That's why I choose Amazon, right?
Exactly.
Look here, Liberal Governor Andrew Cuomo, let's talk about it. Liberal Governor Andrew Cuomo is now begging Amazon to reconsider its decision to back out of plans for a New York headquarters. This as another battle over Amazon is brewing in Arlington, Virginia.
That's right. The cyber guy, Kurt Knudsen, is here with what all this means.
If there's ever been an example of having smart politicians in one room against really idiotic ones, this is it.
Yeah.
This is a perfect one because in New York, they just blew it. 25,000 jobs, about $27 billion in revenue. And somehow AOC thought that the $3 billion tax break was just like $3 billion sitting in a bank somewhere. So, well, we should just use that for other jobs. The money does not exist unless Amazon comes to New York to spend the money.
Do you think Amazon would reconsider going back now that Cuomo's saying, please?
Have you read this open letter? The open letter. I'll say their second attempt here. This is the second try open letter here in New York City to bring Amazon's HQ2 in part to here, and we'll talk about the other city. New Yorkers do not want to give up on the 25,000 permanent jobs, 11,000 union construction and maintenance jobs. And 28 billion in new tax revenues that Amazon was prepared to bring to our state. We know that the public debate that followed the announcement of the Long Island City project was rough and not very welcoming. And the governor, hey, good shake at doing this. Governor Cuomo for state of New York saying, please, let's not give up on this. It doesn't make sense to say no. And the same stupidity is happening in Arlington, Virginia. Same niche groups are rising up. Local politicians go, oh, I can make a name for myself by listening to these groups. They cheer at the end after chasing away one of the largest American businesses on the planet, or that trades globally. What do you believe you're gaining when you chase away American business?
Let me ask you that question. So there is, I believe, a solid level of cronyism in the good deals that these big businesses get to be seduced into these places. That said, you talked about 11,000 construction and union jobs, 25,000 other jobs. What is the argument against that other than that?
Well, think about it. The stress on, so they're hiring 25,000 people, so it's a stress on the systems like transportation. In New York City, it was someone complaining about subway
rising
seats.
housing costs. For people,
right, and then in New York City, it was also the union for retail stores or malls, department stores, were the ones fighting the one here. Wait a minute, what? Trust me, Macy's is not going to close because Amazon put their headquarters in New York. It's not going to happen.
Well, those people buy things too, right?
Correct. And it just none of the math adds up on any of this stuff. So don't believe the niche groups. Believe the niche groups' gripes. Hey, it's real. It's legitimate. Their complaints are legitimate. But it's not solved by chasing away American business. That's not how you win.
And they can't compete. Bernie Sanders is going to speak in Brooklyn today, and he is really the origination of this whole thing about Bezos. Amazon is the bad guy. So I'm not sure your open letter is going to gain steam, right, when you've got Bernie doubling down on it.
Makes sense. Let's fight America. That's perfect. Let's shut down American business. What is going on in the heads of politicians today? So I think they're just raising a flag to try to get noticed right now.
Good point.
Don't buy into it.
On fire today.
Yeah, he is.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. All right. Well, the Washington Post correcting itself after its fake and false reporting about that confrontation on Capitol Hill involving a Covington High School student. So was there retraction or admission enough? That student's attorney responds.
Plus, Michelle Malkin, Chris Christie, and Charles Payne all joining us coming up. Pour a cup of coffee.